What's up, guys? I'm back. Today I want to figure out what the hype is all about with GraphQL. This is going to be the first episode of a new series where I dive into new technologies and see if there's value there. Of course, this is all just my personal opinion. Obviously, there's value there because tons of people are using it. I've only looked at the website. I've heard of GraphQL. I have seen examples of it in the wild, but I've never actually touched it myself. And that's going to be, I think, kind of the fun of this type of video, is that you're going to be watching me dive into a new technology for the first time. So it's a really raw take. I think it'll be really interesting to see how it goes. So I haven't prepared anything. And so you'll be able to get a really raw take of me, senior level engineer, diving into a new technology and seeing what it's all about. So let's see if GraphQL is hype or not. Okay, so first things first, what does GraphQL do? You love a good landing page that actually tells you what it does. And here, this is kind of making sense. You describe the data, ask for what you want, and you get the results. Okay. So already my first thought isn't that just what an API is already? I mean, it's nice that you can specify exactly what field you want, but can't you just customize your API? Is that the advantage here? You get to say exactly what you want? Okay. Get many resources with a single request. GraphQL APIs get all the data your app needs in a single request. Oh, so I could hit multiple APIs in a single request? I guess that's literally what they just said. Oh, nice. Yeah. So, okay. So that seems to be the advantage, right? Yep. Access the full capabilities from your data from a single data point. Okay. Uses types to ensure apps only ask for what's possible and provide clear and helpful errors. Okay. So that makes sense. Okay. Okay. So we have some tools. We can update the APIs without versions. What? Okay, that's interesting. I wonder how that actually gets pulled off in practice. You just add a deprecated field. Okay. Bring your own data and code. Okay, of course everyone's using GraphQL. Okay, I'm convinced. Let's get started. We're going to do JavaScript, obviously. Okay, so you can see here I have this empty directory here. Nothing's happened. Let's get a basic example going. So do I need a client and a server, or wait, yeah, how does this work? What do I need to have set up? And what are all these libraries? These are just examples using different libraries. That's kind of a lot. Okay. So this is just setting up the server client. Oh, okay. Server client tools. Okay. So I just want to set up a basic example, right? So let me just try this. Let me just get this set up here. So how do we do this? Yarn init. Sure. Then let's do yarn add GraphQL. Okay. And then let's do a code here. Great, now let's add this index.js, and I'm just going to copy this all in. And and hop to the package. I don't know if this is gonna suffice, but we will see. We've got Copilot giving me not great suggestions here. Let's just add a dev. How do I run this? Oh, Node. Okay, so we just use Node. Okay, so let's see what happens here. Okay, so what just happened? I don't know if this is the best example. It's super raw. So what's going on here? We've got GraphQL, we've got the build schema. So the schema makes sense, right? The schema is there like a simple explanation for all these things? Yeah, let me actually read the docs, right? Read the docs, man. Stop skipping. It's one of my biggest faults as an engineer. I'll just skip the docs. I just want to dive in. Then providing functions for each field on each type. What? You're joking, right? GraphQL service is created by defining types and fields on those types, then providing functions for each field on the type? Why would I ever do that? What? Okay, then we have this query. Oh, type query. Yeah, let me change this so this makes sense to me. So we have user ID and name, and we'll do like email, right? So now how does this change? So this is the function, I assume, that gives back some arbitrary value. And so now I assume I change this to ID. And then I need functions for all the other fields. That's what this object is doing. So name, just use my name, email, sauceboss, gmail.com. And now what the F is source? Is this the query? Is that what this is? Like, what is source? Yeah, queries mutations. Okay, simplest GraphQL is about asking for specific fields on objects. So is this source just all the fields I'm asking for? So if I said ID name and then I ran this, no, I get an error. Query root must be provided. What does that mean? Let me just go back in time here. So it's just hello. Query root must be provided. Is that saying I need this? User? No. Didn't even modify a basic example. Not good. Not good. So what does that mean? Let's just dig in here. Okay, is there just some way I can... Let me just go back. Let's just slow it down, right? Let me just change this to ID. Oh, maybe it just doesn't like the ID. Name? No, it just doesn't like this at all. Wait, what did I change? If I put everything back. Wait, actually, what did I change? Isn't this the original example? That was query. How does that make any sense? Type query? What? I thought that was creating my own type. What? Type query. Okay, so far not a good start. Not a good start here. That doesn't make any sense. I changed type query and then everything bombs. So I wonder if I keep type query the same and I just add a field, ID string, will this work okay? I imagine it will, right? Okay, so that's good at least. Let me JSON stringify this. What I don't understand is this top level query thing. I thought that was me defining my own type and relating it to like a specific model, but let me just keep reading. I love looking up cheat sheets. Wait, see, this is exactly what I mean. Type query, type user. What? So what is this error exactly? Query root type must be defined. I guess you just need this for some reason. Let me just try to create another type here. I just want to understand like the basics, right? So like, let me create a user, just string name, whatever. And so how does this work then? How do I add additional types here? You know, like how does it know? How do I specify, how do I specify additional types? This doesn't make sense. Right, the schema, we have the query, mutation, subscription, that all makes sense. I still don't understand this like query. Why is this special? I'm gonna go ahead and say the docs here are not good. It's not immediately clear what exactly is happening and how I can modify basic example by going to the introductory example. So I guess I just keep reading. Okay, so I am looking at this tutorial's point example, and it's making a bit more sense. There's some auto magic going on here, but what I am beginning to understand is that the query is the top level object in which all additional queries happen. All additional like schema definitions happen. So everything happens there, I think. So for instance, like my query would consist of, users, like this. So basically it creates this giant object graph. Yeah, I don't know. I'm still working on this. Let's see. Okay, so I have added, so I'm looking at this example in tutorials point. It's being a lot more helpful than the actual docs, which isn't great. Surely there's a better way to present and show how to change things on GraphQL, but whatever. And I've added this make executable schema. I've added a new type and the root value object, the resolver. Let me change this to resolver because that's the official terminology. Resolvers actually, but we'll just call it resolver for now. So I have this information in here, right? We have a function for each type. So now I'm going to try to just add user in here. And I think this is wrong. Let me just say that right away. So I think I'm doing this wrong, but let me just try this. And then let me try to, this is called source. Really seems like an awful name, should be called like query. But I'm gonna try this, and then I wanna look at user ID. I think this will bomb. No, that worked. Okay. Let me just change that value to make sure that I know what's happening, and I do not know what's happening. What is going on? I'm looking for user :ID, and I'm getting query ID. What? Okay, so list cannot be found. So I think what's supposed to happen here is I have user inside of query, and then I can look like this, right? So then I can do, you know, yeah, exactly. Then there's a user in here, and then we go down and then we delete this. So the query, I think, acts as like the true root, but that doesn't really make sense. Why couldn't you have multiple root objects? I don't know. So let me try querying now, user. No, so that's still an error. Right, great. Aliases, operations, variables. How do I just modify a basic example, man? Like, you know, there are two types that are special within a schema. Every GraphQL service has a query type and may or may not have a mutation type. These types are the same as regular object type, but they're special because they define the entry point of every GraphQL query. Why is this buried so deep in the documentation? Shouldn't this be like the first thing you say? You know? I don't know. Then what is this? Like, where did the query go? Isn't the query supposed to be the top level? I don't know. And how are you operating without your query root? Like, what is happening? Is this doing this magic where it's assuming query is right here? You know what I mean? Like, is this query really? You know what I mean? That is exactly what's happening. It's hidden, it's hiding this. It's so annoying. This documentation, man. Like coming into, so I know nothing about GraphQL, right? Coming into this is awful. Like this is an awful experience. They magically are hiding this query field everywhere. Okay. Okay. Okay, so now we're nesting. So how do I do this? How do I do this? Right, I'm legit just trying to query. What do I just do? User? Did you mean user? Oh, I'm not doing this right. It's just this. Oh, okay. There's an aha moment. So I was basically right. I just had the syntax wrong. Okay. All right. All right, guys. I freaked out a little bit. Whatever. It happens. Learning new technology, you know? Okay, great. So that makes sense. So, but this is just a list, right? So what if this was, or I'm sorry, this is just an object. What if this was a list? So let me bump this and let me change this. I assume the syntax is like this magical shit, right? Now what happens? So now I get back the list. I get back the complete list of every item. Here, so let me create another one just to prove this out. Jane Doe, whatever. And then let me, I was gonna do something else here. Oh, I was gonna format my JSON because it looks like shit here. Yeah. Okay, so that makes sense. So now I understand GraphQL. I was missing, I had an extra colon here, and that threw everything out. Let me actually see how good that error message looked. Line 1, column 10, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, I don't know. I feel like this would be a common mistake. Can I just look for colons and say remove the colon? Whatever. Close result. Okay, so 45 minutes in, and I have finally added a new field. I added a new type, I nested the type, and it started to make a little more sense. So everything is under this query object. Wish they said that in the docs more clearly right up front. Do people, like, when you're developing, I'm curious, drop a comment down below. When you're writing code and you're learning a new technology, do you read through all the documentation before you write a line? I don't know about you guys, I don't do that. I start with the basic example they give, and then I try to fidget with it and experiment with it. But based on where this information was, it's as if I was supposed to read all the docs first, you know? And I think that that's a sign of bad docs. If you have to read all the docs to run like a basic example, the docs are bad. The docs are bad. So, but that's just me. That's just me. I could be wrong here. How do I pass? So next thing, how do I pass arguments into my resolvers, right? And then I can pass an argument in here. I'm going to pass one error. Of course, I have an error. Supposed to be a string. Expected name found string. What are all these? I assume these are the function arguments here, just like, I'm just gonna print out all these args. Just dot args, right? I don't know, let's just run it. Yep, what do you know? So where do they say that this is how this works? You know? I don't know. And like, is this the query? Are these the queries, or is this the resolver? Like, is this JavaScript? Like, what is... Where is execution? Dude, I am not a fan of these docs. I'm just like piecing this together. The one that was passed in down here. Oh, GraphQL, man. Oh, I think I'm gonna write like a how-to guide on this. These docs, frankly, they're trash. These docs are trash. Only their first example makes sense. As soon as you start diving into this, what's happening? honestly, not to like flame, because I know engineers are doing hard work usually, but what are these docs? Am I supposed to hit learn more? And I'm gonna have to edit the crap out of this video because there's so much blank time of me just going. This is why we get paid the big bucks, right? To suffer and read shit docs. It's all good though, who cares? Okay, so this is making sense. Let's just keep reading. Now I can set this structure up for my users. I can change this into a full function. Exactly, yeah. I'm going to filter by the arg ID, and then we're going to come in here, set up an ID field for the user. And I'm assuming, let me just rerun this. I'm assuming that these arguments are optional unless I place the bang next to it. Is that true? It is true. Yeah, so arg's coming in empty there. So then I should wrap this in an if statement, right? So let me just change this, or fetched users, I guess. Just keep it simple. And then fetch users filter only if, exactly. Only if we have the args ID will we query down on that, and then I can do, since I magically just know GraphQL now, I can do ID. So let's just look at that. User database not defined. I made a bug, always make bugs. Didn't update the name. This is why you always use replace. Now run, great. Now I get all my users with the ID, and now I'm going to fetch just one user by passing in the ID field. That's kind of weird. On the ID, it should probably be like filter ID. Let me change this. Filter ID, because that naming is like not cool. What is this? Yeah, dot filter ID. Let me run this. So let me update this to filter ID. Well, first let me just run, I guess. Great, so that works. And now let me pass in filter ID, and this equals, I just want to get Jane Doe here. All right, so we get Jane Doe, and then let me add the name so I know it's her. The argument filter ID on user. Oh, I put it on the user, so let me jump up a level. Okay, 54354. Oh, yep. Let me update all my fields, of course. And now no one matches that. Why is that? Is this arg coming in? No, the arg is coming in for sure, right? Yeah. Oh, fetched user. This is actually a function. Fetch user ID as a function. It's kind of odd. Wait, why am I doing that now? Playing mapped items because the resolver just needed to return some value before. Yeah, that makes sense in my head. User ID is not a function. Yes, I know, because I just changed that. Okay, great. All right, so 1 hour in, I can modify. Let me boost this up. 1 hour in, I see the schema. I see the resolver. I see the magic. I see the query, right? It's making sense. And of course, we're going to have types. It is a great feeling when you're working with new technology and you're starting to get it. You're starting to get the picture. So to me, it seems like GraphQL, I'm trying to think, like, you always compare, right? Everything is only good relative to something else. GraphQL is good because it gives you one way to fetch and modify every piece of data in your database or your storage unit, whatever. It gives you a single interface to fetch and modify all of your data. Yeah, up until now, here's that magic BS. Up until now, we have been using shorthand syntax where we omit both query keyword and query name. But in production apps, it's very useful to make your code less ambiguous. Why don't you just start with that? Why don't you start with that and then never say it? You know? Beats me. So that means I can add query here. Okay, yeah, let's look at this input type because we're not just querying data, we're also modifying it. And instead of query, I'll have, I don't know, generator. Okay, so now I have this. I'm going to pull the fetched users object out so that I can modify its state and then it'll stay alive. Then I can run multiple GraphQL fetches. All right, so I can do the query. Should turn this into a function, but whatever. This is Q1. Mutation 1 result. This is Q2. And then inside this mutation, can I just spread the args? Oh, here we go, new user. There we go, that's the right way to do this. And then I'll return the new user, but I'll also add it to fetched users. All right, let's see how we did. Okay, let me turn the filter off on the query. So I can just grab the new users. Okay, what's happening? Expected $ found ID. Or sorry, what I don't understand is the mutation. So it looks like the mutation is, I also specify what I want to get back after it's modified. Okay. Can I just not specify that? Field create user of type user. What do you mean of type user? What? Must have a selection of subfields. Is that this? Okay. Why do I have to receive a result? Aren't I mutating? That's because I said I would. Can I just say void or some shit here? Is there a void keyword? Why do you want a result after you update? Or after you write? I guess to get the latest? Solution, install an entire library. No. So it looks like the answer is no, not by default. You can define a return type which is nullable. Oh. All right, let me just run my final example and then wrap up here. I think I've had enough GraphQL for one day, specifically GraphQL documentation for one day. Great, so as we can see here, when I run this command, I'm getting my query for my first fetch here, and then I'm running my mutation I'm creating a new user, and then I am running a second query to see if my users were updated, and they were. Great, because I pushed the new result here. So let's do a quick recap of what we've learned here. So you have your schema. This is where you define a specific query type, which is where you specify all of the primitives and objects that can be queried. This is where you specify your mutation type, which specifies specific functions that modifies your data. And then you can create a bunch of auxiliary types that basically map to your models. And your schema defines how all of your models can be written and read to and from your backend. That's what the schema does. The resolver maps your queries and mutations from your schema, and it allows you to fetch information from your databases, to read and write, to run CRUD on your databases based on the structure you created in your schema. That's what resolvers do. And then we have operations. I don't know if they refer to that. Yeah, operations. That's looks like the right way to define this. Yeah, operation type is either query, mutation, or subscription. Great. So the operations are how from your front end you'll call your queries, mutations, and later subscriptions. I didn't get to subscriptions here. So your operations is how you request and write to your backend from your front end, right? And in my example, I'm just keeping it all localized here in a single node file. And then you build your GraphQL object, your schema, and then you run your server or your whatever your backend is, and then your client can then hit it. There are different plugins, different packages that you can use to set up your backend and your front end and map everything out. And that is my rough take of GraphQL. My thoughts? The real value in GraphQL seems to be in creating a single endpoint and a single structure in which your APIs can be queried. To me, it looks like your GraphQL layer can replace all your APIs, or they can be placed right in front of your APIs if you already have API like legacy code or existing code. I need to play with this some more. I can see the value, right? Because the value is that you have a single interface for writing and reading to all of your APIs. There seems to be a decent amount of boilerplate, certainly a learning curve, or maybe a documentation curve. I'm not a fan, clearly, of the GraphQL documentation, but I, after 2 hours here, have the value add of GraphQL. I am going to create more content around GraphQL. I know it's a super relevant piece of technology right now. I need to give it some time to settle in because really these docs really threw me off. But also that's just learning something new, right? It's, there's always that initial challenge. So, whatever. Yeah, so that's been GraphQL. I'm going to create more GraphQL content. I need to dig in more and understand this, and I'll create more content around it as well. But yeah, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in the next one.